He's the King of England, yet refuses to eat what most of his people love. For decades, King Charles has lived a life bound by duty, discipline, and refined taste. But behind the polished silver and ceremony lies a man whose plate tells the story of who he became. From foods banned for moral reasons to dishes avoided because of family memories, his plate is a reflection of the man himself. And one of these refusals sparked a quiet scandal that changed palace kitchens forever. Today we uncover 10 meals King Charles refuses to eat, and why. 1. Foie gras. The royal ban. It began with a royal act of rebellion, not with words, but with a returned gift. When a French president once sent King Charles a golden tin of foie gras, he politely sent it back unopened. To him, luxury produced through cruelty isn't luxury at all. Foie gras, the silky delicacy made from the liver of force-fed ducks and geese, has long symbolized indulgence across Europe. But for Charles, it represents something different: the price of ignorance. He banned it from all royal residences years before his coronation. Guests and visiting dignitaries quickly learned, if you dine with the king, compassion is part of the menu. This quiet defiance spoke volumes. A royal statement made not with a speech, but with a gesture, one that echoed across France and the British press alike. It's easy to picture. The gilded tin, the polite thank you note, and the unopened parcel quietly returned. A silent rejection of cruelty disguised as cuisine. If he can reject a royal delicacy, wait until you hear what he's done to a simple British breakfast. 2 eggs in butter, too indulgent for the king, while his mother's mornings smelled of sizzling butter and toast, Charles's. Let's begin with herbal tea and oats. He refuses eggs fried in butter, calling them too heavy for a working morning. In his view, food should fuel, not weigh down. His morning ritual is famously meticulous. He travels with a small breakfast box wherever he goes. 6 jars of honey from his personal hives, homemade granola, dried fruits, and precisely measured seeds. No fry-ups, no sausages, no grease. In his world, even breakfast must be balanced. Precision over pleasure. This quiet control might sound rigid, but it mirrors how he lives. Even his eggs, when he eats them, are boiled exactly 4 minutes. Not a second more, not a second less. To palace staff, breakfast is a ceremony. Every spoon, every napkin, every item placed just so. One former valet once said, "He doesn't demand luxury, he demands consistency." But his next rule isn't about calories or consistency. It's about control inside the royal kitchen itself. 3. Rare meat, a tradition. He quietly broke in a palace where perfection is expected. The line between respect and mistake can be a shade of pink. King Charles refuses rare meat entirely. Every steak, roast, or lamb cut must be cooked through, always. For most, a perfectly seared, medium rare steak might be a mark of sophistication. For the king, it's an unwelcome risk. The habit dates back to his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who feared food poisoning during her travels. Charles absorbed that caution early, a lesson served not through fear, but through discipline. Former palace chefs admit that during banquets they'd rather overcook every dish than risk serving him anything pink. They describe the tension in the kitchen when preparing meat for him, precision measured not by tenderness, but safety. For Charles, elegance isn't found in indulgence, it's found in order. And that order extends beyond meat, beyond flavour, into the philosophy of every meal he eats. Yet sometimes it's not danger he avoids. It's discomfort, found in something most of us consume every single day. For dairy, a delicate refusal. The king's relationship with dairy has always been cautious. He isn't allergic, but he's long been sensitive to cow's milk and heavy cream. Over time, his chefs learn to adapt. Instead of dairy, Charles prefers goat's milk or modern plant alternatives like almond and oat. His switch wasn't born of trend, it came from necessity. Even his morning tea, that most British of rituals, follows this pattern. It's poured with almond milk, measured precisely, never stirred. Every motion deliberate. He once said he believed food affects not just the body but the spirit. That belief defines him. You'll never see the king indulge in thick cream sauces, cheesy gratins, or custard-heavy desserts. Those are the indulgences of another era, not his. A man known for discipline extends it even to digestion. But while dairy may bring discomfort, his next refusal challenges Britain's most iconic dish. 1 millions can't live without. 5 fish and chips, too greasy for the Green King. When Britain eats battered fish, the king eats grilled. He avoids fish and chips, calling it too greasy and environmentally wasteful. To him, deep frying, the golden crisp many adore, represents excess, not enjoyment. Even on seaside tours, when locals gather with paper cones and salt in hand, Charles opts for something lighter. A grilled fillet with lemon and parsley. For a man who wants to connect with his people, one journalist wrote. It's ironic. He won't touch their favourite dish. But for Charles, this isn't about distance from the public. It's about staying true to his environmental principles. He's been a champion of organic farming since the 1980s, long before it was fashionable. He believes every meal should respect the planet, not strain it. To him, fish and chips aren't just unhealthy, they're unsustainable. And in a world where oceans suffer, he won't celebrate waste. When Britain eats comfort food, the king eats conscience. And speaking of conscience, his next refusal isn't about fat or flavour, it's about morality, compassion, and the power of personal example. 6 Veal, a matter of ethics. Decades before animal welfare documentaries reached mainstream television, Charles was already outspoken about the treatment of farm animals. He refuses to eat veal, not for health, but for ethics. To him, the confinement of calves for tenderness is an act of cruelty that has no place in the modern age. Back when he was still Prince of Wales, his stance drew quiet attention within palace circles. Chefs who once suggested veal on banquet menus soon learned never to ask again. Chefs quietly crossed veal off the menu, one royal cook recalled. It became an unspoken rule, a silent sign of respect. His decision set a tone across the royal household. Where past monarchs enjoyed indulgence, Charles introduced mindfulness. He's not a man of loud protests. He's a man of quiet conviction. And sometimes, refusing a dish says more than any speech could. From foie gras to veal, the king has proven that compassion can coexist with class. But as we'll see next, some of his refusals aren't driven by ethics or health, but something surprisingly human: temptation. 7. Chamas food. The royal contradiction. There's a McDonald's near one of his estates. He's never been inside. King Charles views fast food as a symbol of waste and overindulgence. The bright wrappers, plastic trays, and sugary sodas go against everything he values: sustainability, craftsmanship, moderation. Yet the story isn't entirely one of denial. On his Scottish estate, the king once made his own burger, lamb he raised, bread baked from local grain. It was his idea of fast food: slow, organic, and personal. If it doesn't come from the soil of Britain, his former chef said, he doesn't trust it. To Charles, food is a relationship between man and land, eater and earth. Processed meals sever that bond, so he stays faithful to his values, even if it means missing out on convenience. And trust for him is everything, especially when it comes to what enters the royal kitchen, which brings us to one of the strangest bans in royal culinary history: a food forbidden not for health, not for ethics, but for etiquette itself. 8. Garlic. The palace contraband. At palace banquets, garlic isn't banned for flavour. It's banned for diplomacy. Continuing his mother's century-old rule, King Charles forbids garlic completely. The reason is simple: you can't charm presidents with garlic breath. It's one of the oldest and strangest royal rules still enforced in the modern era. In the kitchens of Buckingham Palace, even a trace of garlic is treated like contraband. Former chefs have said that the rule is so strict that garlic powder isn't even kept in the pantry. One joked, you could lose your job if the king smelled it cooking. But there's logic behind the tradition. Royal engagements require conversation, and every meal with world leaders is followed by hours of polite discussion, close, face-to-face. To Charles, diplomacy begins not with words, but with presence. His stance may seem excessive, but for him, the smallest details shape perception. He would rather sacrifice taste than dignity. And while garlic is forbidden for the sake of conversation, his next refusal isn't about breath, it's about the earth itself. 9 tomatoes out of season. a matter of principle. He could have summer in winter, but he chooses patience. King Charles refuses to eat tomatoes out of season, believing that food should follow nature, not convenience. It's not about taste alone, it's about respect for the rhythm of the land. As one of the earliest advocates for organic agriculture, Charles has always believed that modern farming disconnected people from nature. He once said, "If the soil can't provide it now, then man should wait." That quote has guided his kitchen for decades. Everything served at his table, fruits, vegetables, herbs, must be local and seasonal whenever possible. If a tomato wasn't grown in Britain's natural season, it doesn't belong on the royal plate. His chefs have adapted. In the colder months, palace menus swap summer salads for root vegetables, grains, and wild greens. Meals remain colourful but never artificial. To the king, flavour means more than satisfaction. It means authenticity, a bond with the seasons, a quiet appreciation of timing. He could have flown in the finest produce from anywhere on earth, but chooses instead to eat like his farmers, humbly, patiently, with respect for the soil beneath him. And as the year turns, so does his menu. That discipline, that choice to wait, says more about his character than any public speech. But our final story moves from principle to something more personal, a food that carries memory, emotion, and a touch of pain. 10 Trifle. The dessert of memory trifle. The colourful, sweet, unmistakably British dessert layered with sponge, cream, and fruit. For most, it's nostalgia in a bowl. For King Charles, it's discomfort. Those who've worked in royal households remember that trifle would often appear at family dinners when he was a boy. But in his memories, those dinners weren't moments of warmth. They were quiet, tense affairs, marked by distance and formality. For many, dessert is a reward, a moment of joy after a meal. For him, it was a reminder of silence, of sitting still, of words unsaid. It's not the flavour he avoids, it's the feeling. Though he's never banned it, it rarely appears when he's present, and when it does, he simply moves to the fruit bowl, perhaps out of habit, perhaps out of memory. Trifle, to the rest of Britain, might represent childhood happiness. To the king, it's a dessert from a past he'd rather leave untouched. Even dessert in the palace carries its own story, one that says as much about emotion as etiquette. And together, these small choices, foie gras, butter, meat, dairy, and dessert, paint a portrait of a man guided not by appetite, but by conviction. Outro. From foie gras to trifle, every refusal on the king's plate tells a story of compassion, discipline, and belief. Where others indulge, he abstains. Where others follow fashion, he follows principle. Each rejection is a reflection of his values: sustainability, restraint, and quiet defiance. He's a monarch who believes that how he eats is part of how he leads. His table isn't just for dining, it's for demonstration, a statement of balance in a world of excess. Even those closest to him say his eating habits reveal more about him than any speech. They show a man who would rather act on principle than yield to pleasure. And next time on Crown Chronicles, we'll uncover the royal rules still shaping palace life today, including one that even the king himself secretly broke. So, which of these refusals surprised you the most? The luxury he rejected, or the comfort he left behind? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to join us again at the royal table.